All right, we'll want to welcome everybody to the big event bonus webinar. My name is Brian Sharp, and for those of you that I don't know or haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, online or offline or at the event, I want to welcome you. I want to thank you first for supporting the big event. It's been something we've been putting on now for over 5 years in our Sacramento region, and this is the first year we've actually released one of the videos to the public for purchase. So we're really excited about sharing that and sharing a little bit more about kind of the messages that we covered that night. And most importantly, hopefully something that you can take away. You know, as we record this, the event itself was about 6 weeks ago. Actually, it was exactly 6 weeks ago. And for those of you that were there, you know, part of the reason for doing this webinar, not just to give you a bonus for buying the video, but it's really important to me that you get value, that you get results from it. As I said that night, you know, if you just leave motivated, I think I have failed you in some regard. So my hopes with this bonus webinar tonight is not only can we kind of go back and touch upon some of the concepts that we discussed that night, but I'm going to cover what I call the momentum method. And my hope is that you can leave here tonight and get back into your business or get back into some of those goals and really start creating something. And as Michael Gerber said, the entrepreneur is our visionary, the creator in each of us. And I want you to have that mindset as we go through this tonight. I mean, this is kind of the beginning. And I also want to set the tone that you don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur in order to connect with what we're talking about. This is about the entrepreneurial spirit. This is really about a mindset. This is about getting better personally and in our business. So what I hope to do tonight really are two main things. And it's the same thing we talked about at the event, the same theme hopefully you caught or took away from the videos if you've had a chance to watch those. And that is ideas and inspiration. The premise, the genesis, if you will, behind the big event originally was to bring together the small business community. And we started them, you know, back in like '08 when things were pretty rough. And although we're not out of the woods yet, it's certainly better than it was. And we just wanted to motivate the small business community. We're really the foundation of what we do and the growth that the country needs. So, but I didn't want to just get together and get all hyped up and then leave, because that doesn't always solve the problem, right? That it's nice, it's exciting, but we know statistically 24 to 48 hours, that excitement, that motivation is gone. So we want to make sure that you receive, you take away, you connect with some realistic, relatable, tangible ideas that you can actually implement in your business. Not a bunch of fluff, not something that gets you to buy a workbook, but something you can really take away and take into your business or take into your life and turn it into results. That's really, really important to me. The second part is the inspiration. And you know, I'm a big fan, I'm a big believer of motivation, but I also know that I can't motivate you, right? That's on you. So my hope is that maybe we provide you a platform, a reason, a moment where you make that decision to take action, where you're inspired to do something, maybe because of one of the speakers you saw that night or one of the speakers you see on the video. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story today and the process, that journey we go through in this wild, crazy thing we call the entrepreneurial spirit. And we covered a lot of different topics that night. And, you know, it's a bit of a loaded question to ask, you know, what do you think the entrepreneurial spirit is? Right? It's a very different answer for all of us. And as I opened with, you know, you don't necessarily have to own your own business to have the entrepreneurial spirit. I think some of the greatest employees, the greatest managers work with an entrepreneurial spirit. I think great artists create with an entrepreneurial spirit. So to me, the entrepreneurial spirit has all these different concepts: innovation and passion and purpose and hope and motivation and swagger. And we were so lucky to bring across people that I felt that really exemplified each of these different areas. And so I'm going to start off tonight by sharing a little bit more about my story as it relates to the entrepreneurial spirit, which is not something that I've done much on stage certainly in recent years, and I didn't do it at the big event, because I'm hoping that as we get to know each other on another level now, beyond the big event, that you can see not only my purpose behind the big event, but how I've connected with each of these themes, each of these topics, and hopefully with what we wrap up with, discussing the momentum method, you'll see how we've applied it in a way that you can do the same. So really my goal here is simplifying, right? Because it could be any one of those things. And each of us that attended the event or watched the videos have done that for a different reason. Some of you have just hung out with us for all the years, and God bless you. Thank you. Some of you had no idea what to expect. Some of you have never seen me speak or never been around us or our brand, and that's okay too. I want you to take away whatever you need from this. And so my real sincere goal is that you create some sort of a roadmap, some sort of a plan to give you some direction for this journey. As we record this live, we know we're 6-8 weeks just about now into the new year. And sometimes we got to just hit that reset button. Maybe we were a little overzealous with our goal setting, or maybe we never really started. I don't care when you watch this or hear it or when you're ready. I'm hoping that this can be a catalyst for you. But more than anything, as it relates to the entrepreneurial spirit, as it relates to this journey that we go on, whether you're working on health or wealth or relationships or your business, I think these themes, I think these lessons transcend all of those. I think it applies to all of those. And I want you to know that I understand. I get it. I know how hard it is. It's always so humbling after the event to hear so many great compliments and gosh, people that were just impacted, right? That's why we do it. But I got to tell you guys, I'm up there as much for me as anybody else. I mean, I need these stories. I need these strategies. We're all going through this. I always talk in the opening of every event, and listen, this is not the mountaintop talk, right? I'm tired of the speakers who stand up at the mountain and say, hey, we did it and you can too. And there's such a disconnect between either when they did it or how they did it. I hope that you understand I'm in the trenches with you. We're building businesses. We're stubbing our toes. We're making mistakes. And boy, it all started way back when. And some of you can relate to this. I shared this picture on social media today. I'm not going to lie, a little embarrassed. But like many of you, my journey, my story began at a young age. I was entrepreneurial all of my young life. In fact, I was the kid who had the paper routes. I'd mow lawns. I babysat. I mean, I liked making money. I liked buying stuff. And so I figured out really quick, the harder I worked, the more I could figure out to work on commission, I could make more money. So that's what I did. And this is a picture of me here when I was 16 with my first sales job, selling boats and water skis and all kinds of stuff. And that was kind of the foundation of that entrepreneurial spirit. And then that shifted. I had early young success. I was able to buy, cool stuff. And I bought my first house when I was 20 in the Napa Valley. That, by the way, is not a picture of my backyard. I wish it was. But, that kind of went into, the fun years of growing. And okay, that's not me. Well, it is me, but that's not how I dressed when I started my first business. This is actually how I dressed. This was my first official headshot as an insurance guy. This is kind of the progression of that entrepreneurial spirit. Kind of a horrific photo. I don't know what I was thinking with the tie, but that's the beauty of pictures, right? So I started my first business at 22. I bought the first house at 20 and on that path to entrepreneurism, right? Started an insurance agency and kind of built that up through the years. And one of the interesting things for those of you that grow businesses that are kind of a book of business is my mentor used to say they're the most overworked and underpaid businesses in the beginning and the most underworked, overpaid businesses in the end. And I got to tell you, I absolutely agree. It was really, really hard. But there's a spot in all of us as you start or you restart this entrepreneurial journey, this spirit that we have. There's usually a time, a moment. We're going to talk about this later, but there's usually a moment where you realize, I can pull this off, right? Sometimes it's just a transaction. Sometimes it's something someone says, validation from a competitor. I mean, it could be anything, simple, even small stuff. but there's a moment where you realize you make it. And I finally hit that about 5 years in. I'm like, you can breathe for a minute because you're like, I'm going to do this. I actually own a business. You've been doing it for 5 years, but now you really believe. And it was about that time that I loaned a car to one of my very best friends, lifelong best friend, nicest guy in the world. And unfortunately, he was so nice that he loaned it to somebody else who was not a very good driver. And well, we had some issues because this is where I was living. This was the house I had bought up at Lake Berryessa. But unfortunately, this was the car that was returned. And for those of you that aren't in insurance, that is what we call a total. So needless to say, because I had the house and I had the business and those guys didn't, I was the one who was sued. I didn't even know the guy had the car, didn't even know who he was. To this day, I've never met the guy. But I lost everything. Lost the house, cars, the boat. My girlfriend left me. My dog died. I mean, it was like a bad country song. And no offense if you like country, but it was one of those times. And I'm sure many of you listening to this and watching this can relate because we all have your own version of my story, right? That it all happens. It piles on unfairly. And that's where I was at. I'd started young, had young success, started building. You think you've got it all figured out, and then boom, you get nailed. And it was a very scary time. And not only did I lose everything, I ended up being homeless. For several months, I actually lived in my office physically. And I showered at the gym. And I always joke now that I was in the best shape of my life because I had to go to the gym literally every day. But I understand the entrepreneurial spirit because it'll drive you to do things that some people just don't understand. It'll drive you to do things that probably aren't always in the best interest of yourself or your health or your family or anything, but you're driven, you are focused, you're determined. And that's what I was. I was going to build that business. And so I kind of pushed through. And over the next 5 years, I built with a different mindset. I always say there's kind of two different ways you can build a business. You can build a business inspired, or you can build a business angry. And quite frankly, I built it angry. I felt like something had been taken from me and I was mad at the world. I had lost everything, literally, starting all over again. And so here I find myself putting my head down. And over the next 5 years, not only did I rebuild and continue building the agency, but I started back up a new company with some old friends in the boat business. And I started planning out my speaking business with Go Big. And we started a real estate company. And all of a sudden, by about 30 years old, here I find myself with 4 companies, massive growth. We're grossing about $10 million a year between all of the companies. We've got probably nearly 50 employees total between all the businesses. It was craziness. And not only that, then I meet my dream girl. And we get married. We buy the dream house. It's got the little bridge and it's got the winding driveway, right? We started our family. There's our 2 boys. We now have a third, my little baby girl, Presley. And then, we had the stuff, the toys. My black convertible. Are you kidding me? I loved that car, right? And so here I was. And once again, we think we've got it all dialed in, right? We're right on track. But there's something, I don't know, interesting, bizarre, painful about this entrepreneurial experience, this journey, this spirit, is that it can bite us. And just when you think you've got it all figured out, it can go away just like that. And that's exactly what happened for me. I got a call one day from my wife. And she said, Brian, you've got to come home. And you have to understand now that my wife is not somebody who... She's the stable one in our house, but she was clearly upset. She said, you got to come home. And so I rushed home from work, and turns out that our son, at the time he was 8 months old, was having a kind of not a seizure-like symptoms. Went to the hospital, and the doctor didn't know what it was. We ended up in the hospital for a week. They're gluing 100 electrodes on his head. They locked us in a room for 2 days. They put these electrodes on his head. It would take 45 minutes of me squeezing him tight as he's screaming. I'm sweating profusely. And if you have children, it's just so hard to describe that helpless feeling when you can't help your baby. And they glue these electrodes on his head, this massive wad of wires connected to the wall, and I'd have to put him on the ground and watch him walk around or crawl around at that time. And when he would start shaking, we would have to say something because they were recording it. When we talk about a moment, something that gets your attention to take action, I'll tell you that is one that is just ingrained in my brain. It was scary, it was helpless, it was frustrating, it was all of those things. And shortly after that, and we got out of the hospital and they couldn't tell us what was wrong, but they could tell us it wasn't going to be anything that would be fatal or ultimately serious, and he should grow out of it. But his new parents were very scared. Several weeks later, we caught my best friend and business partner embezzling from our largest company. 6 figures. A month after that, the real estate market for investors started to break down, long before it started happening for the traditional homeowner market. And investors that we had, lines of credit that we had, were literally gone overnight. And I had to lay off my father-in-law and my brother from our real estate company, shoulder millions of dollars of debt. And about a month after that, I came driving up to that big fancy house in my fancy car, and there was a business card in the door, and you can guess exactly who that was. It was your neighborhood friendly IRS agent. And it turns out my bookkeeper wasn't paying payroll taxes, and we owed about $50,000 in back taxes due in a week. They don't mess around. And so you can go real quickly from all of this to nothing. That was 90 days, guys, one summer. And you have to remember that I had already fought through this almost 10 years earlier. Lost everything at 25 and rebuilt it up. Millionaire by 3. You know, all the things that people, accolades, people saying, you know what, you've got nothing. In fact, you have less than that. So my wife and I were on a business trip. And we had a conversation. And I don't know if you've been in one of those spaces before where you are tired and you're frustrated and you're sad and you're overwhelmed with all kinds of experiences. And she said, you know what? We don't have to do it this way. And it wasn't about blame. She was just asking why. Why are we doing this to ourselves? And it was such an important moment in our lives and in our businesses because we realized that the entrepreneurial spirit we had wasn't gone. We just needed to move it in a different direction. And so we made a deal to reset, to come home and purposely, on our terms, shut it down. We sold our big house, we sold the cars, we sold the boat, we started selling or closing businesses, stuff that was very hard on my ego, very scary action steps to take, but they were the right ones. And more importantly, we made a commitment to each other to focus on what we were truly passionate about, to really pursue our entrepreneurial spirit. And for my wife, that was screenwriting. And for me, that was being on stage. And for those of you that weren't at the event, you saw the video. And for those of you that were there, the theater we filmed that in, there's a lot of purpose behind that decision. Aside from it being a really cool venue, it's where this picture was taken, which was one of the very first times I spoke as a professional speaker. On stage, auditioning for a TV pilot for the Monstars of Motivation. Learning from somebody who's become a great friend and mentor, Kevin Bracey, which you also might now realize that his wife was there when we filmed that night. We'll talk about her in a moment. So my wife and I made a deal. She said, if you go get on stage, I will go pitch my script. And that was the deal. We were going to pursue our entrepreneurial dreams, our true spirit. And well, we came home and she wasn't messing around, guys. She figured it out. She got me signed up for this audition. I went, ultimately ended up winning a spot. And that kind of launched things for me as a speaker. She kept up her end of the bargain though. She was 8 months pregnant later that same year, pregnant with our second son, River. And we were going down, we went down to LA. She was 8 months pregnant. Think about that. But she stuck to her word. And we went down for her to pitch her script to 5 production companies. Scared out of it. She doesn't even like talking on the phone. Scared to take action, but did it. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. In fact, this picture I'm showing you here, I took this picture. We were in the hotel room. She was just about to go downstairs to the very first meeting. And I said, baby, turn around. Let me take your picture. And she goes, why? Because, you know, she's pregnant. She doesn't want to be taken. And I said, somebody's going to need to see this picture someday. And that's exactly why I'm showing it to you right now, because somebody that can hear my voice needs to see this picture and know that she was scared to pursue that dream. She was scared to embrace that entrepreneurial spirit, and yet she did it. And yet she did it. Entrepreneurial spirit, guys, it's a powerful thing. And I don't share my story with you because it's not done. You know, she went down and she pitched, and we continued to build our businesses. And here I am today doing what I love to do. Speaking, putting on events and consulting and building businesses. It's just amazing. Hasn't been easy. We live very differently than we used to, and we're okay with that. I'm blessed. We have 3 happy and healthy kids. My wife's able to stay home and take care of them, and she's still doing businesses, and I'm still doing business. It's awesome. I don't share it with you to brag or show off because we haven't really done anything that great, but we've done something in spite of all the things we faced, which is no different than you. I'm no big deal. Trust me. I understand how much more successful people are than me. I've got such a long way to go. I share this with you so you know I understand what this journey is like. I've been kicked in the gut and had to get back up multiple times, and we ain't done, and neither are you. This entrepreneurial spirit is all of these things, right? It's all of these things in different ways, and you need them at different times. Right? So as we went through the big event, first we started off by talking a little bit about innovation. And that was CJ. Love CJ. One of the smartest guys I know. I just love listening to this guy talk. And when I loved his take about innovation, because innovation as an entrepreneur is, you know, even if you don't invent things, we're innovators because we have ideas, we have dreams, we have goals. And we're trying to take something so organic, something that we're not doing, and turn it into a business, even if it shouldn't be, right? We're just innovators by nature. And when you think of innovators, you know, you think about people like Steve Jobs or Richard Branson, or you can think about, for me, I love action and adventure sports, like Tony Hawk. For skateboarding was an innovator, right? These are people that they don't just change things, they create entire industries. That's what innovation is all about. But what I really think, you can start overthinking it. And what I loved about CJ's message is it really boiled down to this. He said that doing is the best kind of thinking. See, we think of innovators and think, oh, they just lock themselves up in a room with 16 whiteboards and that's all that they do. And that's not necessarily true. Too often we're out thinking ourselves. I want to give you permission to go out there and make a mess. All right? Too often, new business owners or people who are reinventing, who are pivoting, are too scared to go. They want to get it all figured out, have all the ducks in order, whatever analogy or thing you want to describe it as. And you know what I tell you? I say, go create chaos. And not in the sense of painful chaos, not in the sense of do things that are unethical or that are going to hurt your business, but you're going to hurt your business by not taking any action. So here we are talking about such a mental concept of innovation, and yet CJ's message is that taking action is the best kind of thinking. And he gave some really wonderful examples. Then we move to another topic as it relates to the entrepreneurial spirit, which is swagger, one of my favorites. And I was so excited to have Damon Smith join us. And we talked about him as an athlete and as an author and all these things. But what came out of it, which I didn't expect, because we don't script our talks, you know, the interviews up there, we talked a lot about fear, talked a lot about failure. And I don't know about you, but I like to think that those aren't a big part of my vocabulary, but you know what? They are. Maybe not my vocabulary, but certainly my internal thoughts. I mean, I'm constantly fearful of not doing things right, or not achieving what I wanted to, or missing a goal, or doing the wrong thing, right? And we certainly try to avoid failure. But what he talked about was you keep doing it anyway. That you can't be afraid. You can't let that paralyze you, right? He talked about it being a mindset. And so my great takeaway from Damon was that swagger, that mindset, is a decision to be great. A decision you have to make. So make the decision to be great. Like, that was it. It was so black and white to him. And I thought, Wow, that is such a great way to look at it. You know, the way that I translate that for me as a business person, as an entrepreneur, do you remember the first time maybe you shared your business idea with somebody? I mean, you are fired up, and Lord help them if they don't believe in it as much as you do, because you're going to run them over. Or the first time that you got your business cards, man, you had some swagger. You would show those suckers to anybody who was moving, right? At the gas station, at the grocery store, it doesn't matter. And somewhere along the line, if you've been in business or you've experienced some challenges or failure, we stop. We lose it. It fades. Swagger is kind of elusive, like motivation, right? And we've got to get it back. We've got to have swagger, small business people. You got to be able to walk in a room and change it for the better. And the way we do that is between the ears, right? Got to make the decision to be great. So we talked about swagger. And then that led to Lisa's talk about purpose. And I think purpose is a really interesting topic as it relates to the entrepreneurial spirit, because it goes hand in hand. But I want to make sure that we cover it in a way that's realistic. Because what I loved about Lisa's talk is that it was a very candid look at her journey as it related to finding your purpose. And you know, I've had some very candid talks with mentors as of late, and sometimes we tie too much to our purpose, that if I'm not doing exactly what my purpose is, and I'm failing. And that's not always true. There's lots of ways to achieve and pursue your purpose. And again, sometimes we start to overthink that a little bit. There's lots of ways of living and working with purpose. There's people who have lots of different types of jobs that may not be necessarily what their purpose is, but that shouldn't stop you from living your purpose. And I think as entrepreneurs, we fall into a trap sometimes of making sure or having this rule, this guideline that they all have to be in this pretty little box. And sometimes that box is a little messy. It's not perfect. It doesn't always close up just right. So what I took away from Lisa was more about the process, because the purpose is going to change. It's going to evolve just like we are. There's a plan behind the purpose. And so what she said so eloquently at the end is that you have to be willing to reinvent yourself. You can't be afraid to start, but you also can't be afraid to change. And I can tell you, as somebody who's lost everything twice in his life, you know, I had the accolades and I had all the stuff and all the ridiculousness that goes with it. Like to think I'm getting older and wiser a little bit every day. But you know, in looking back, one of my biggest challenges was mentally I had tied my identity to that success or to that image that I thought I had or whatever. And I think we all do that. Because when you feel like you're living with purpose and passion, if the business begins to fail or change or whatever, that's us. Like, we're one thing. And it's really hard to separate those two things. And as a result, that's sometimes why entrepreneurs make really bad business decisions. That's why we live in our office, because we're bound and determined to prove everybody wrong, right? Don't be afraid to change, right? The action step here is reinventing, changing, adapting to what's going on out there, right? One of the time I was trying to describe this, I was trying to find a way to explain how I had to finally let go of that. And the only phrase I came up with was this, that sometimes we must lose our identity in order to find it. And if you read any books on startups or major turnarounds in business, most of the time, the big successful business that we know started as something very, very different. So don't tie too much with, I have to have my purpose all figured out and it all perfectly planned, because as soon as you get in and start doing, right? Doing is the best part or form of thinking. As soon as you start doing something, you're going to have to adapt and change. And that's what that message of purpose was all about. That led us into hope. And if you haven't had an opportunity yet to watch or see the video, this is, if you have to pick one section, I would pick this one, because we had Jessica and Tammy from It Takes Guts, which was our charity, our organization that we supported this year. And just amazing women. But what was really cool about it was that we had not only them there to support and tell us about their cause and their story, and the story of hope and determination and passion and all these things, right? But at the same time, they're entrepreneurs. They are both successful entrepreneurs that ended up going down this unplanned journey and meeting each other and building something much greater than themselves, right? Hope is a very important part of being an entrepreneur, of the entrepreneurial spirit. We need it to start, right? You sit around, you think, oh, someday I could do this. It could be that. We could build this. So you need hope to get started. And then as soon as you start and the honeymoon's over, you need hope to keep going. You need it to keep going. And the challenge is that you either have it or you need it. And what I loved about Jessica and Tammy and It Takes Guts is that they fight for it. They fight for it. And I asked them this question. I said, there was 400 some odd people in the room, and somebody is bound to be in there going through a tough time. Maybe you are right now. Maybe you have some major life decisions. Maybe you're fed up with your job or your business or your health, your wealth, whatever it is. But there's something in where you feel like maybe you're losing that battle, right? Where you've lost a little bit of hope. And I asked them, out of all the people that would be qualified to answer this question, I think it's them, because they face that every day with the health challenges that their children have. But they refuse to look at it that way. And Jessica looked me straight in the face and said, you got to go do something. She said, if you lose hope, right, then what have you got? You got nothing left. By definition, if you lose hope, you are hopeless. And so she said, the only option that we have is to go do something. And they started the nonprofit not knowing even what to do. They just knew they had to do something. In our businesses, and heck, if you want to look at any facet of your life, your health, your wealth, your relationships, activity breeds results. So if you feel like you've lost hope, although it sounds counterproductive, it's hard to do, hard to wrap our head around in that space. But the best thing we can do is do something. And that leads to the last theme, which was about motivation. And we had Patrick come up. And he told it's just a fun, intriguing, but powerful story about his journey and motivation. Because motivation is very, elusive. Just when you've got it, it seems to fade away. It takes work. And I often say that for many of us in small business or in sales or whatever it is that you're in, that we're working more for less, right? It's tough. No matter how many great books you read, the seminars you attend, the great people you hang around, even the best of us get a little worn down, and we need to be proactively working on this motivation, something that gets us going. So motivation is certainly the catalyst to take action, but it's also what sustains us, keeps us moving, right? And it's so funny when I work with businesses, particularly small businesses, if they're not willing to go down this road, I'm not always sure I can help them. Because it's kind of the secret. It's kind of where all those results begin with. When you're the best between your ears, you're usually the best in all other areas of your life. It just seems to go hand in hand that way. And I'm not smart enough to break it all down for you. There's better people for that. I just know that there's some form of motivation. So, we look for these little nuggets, right? And here was Patrick's, and I love it. He said, the road to being is through doing. Are we starting to see a theme here? The road to being, right? The road to motivation, to that mindset, to being there, to achieving, is through doing, right? What did Jessica and Tammy say about hope? Do something. What did Lisa say about purpose? That you have to reinvent yourself. You need to do something. What did Damon say about swagger? He said, you've got to make the decision to be great. You've got to do something. What did CJ say about innovation? He said, doing is the best kind of thinking. Are you starting to see the theme? And that's where we want to talk about building that momentum. If you look back at all the content, all the concepts, all the themes that we had throughout that evening, and they were all great individually, the one common element they all had was about taking action. And so as I wrapped up that night, I had about 8 minutes to try and make sure that the audience just didn't leave inspired, but able to take action. And I want to finish tonight by sharing a little bit more about that concept, since we have a little bit more time to do that. See, for me, I have to keep it simple. And the momentum method is something that, as I looked back at the businesses I had built, as I looked back at the challenges I had overcome and still continue to, as I look back at the conversations that I've had with many successful business people, amazing mentors I'm blessed to have in my life, there's no secret pill. There's no one thing they did that said, oh, go do this. It was about fundamentals. So I started thinking, okay, what are the fundamentals? What are these? How do I put into buckets what these guys and gals are all doing that I can help my clients, that I can help myself with? Because we think it's about money or luck or timing or whatever, and all those things play a part in it, but I don't think so. I think what really builds businesses, what builds health and wealth and relationships, it's momentum. It's momentum. I'm much more interested in long-term sustained success, which is how I define momentum, is sustained success. And so this formula I created is just a simple way to start small so we can go big. And there's just 2 pieces to the formula. The first is the motivation, the mindset, right? Most of our concepts we talked about have something to do with our mindset. Passion, innovation, swagger, motivation, purpose, all these things. So we've got to get our mind right. Focus, the drive, the energy. And when we apply to that movement, the right kind of activity in the right direction, those combined, 2 very simple things can create momentum. And folks, that is what gets the results. So let's break these down real quick. Let's look first at motivation. Motivation is such a great, great concept, but it gets so convoluted at the very same time. And, you know, I stole the name for my first company, for the consulting company I had, the Go Big company. I'll be honest, I stole it. I stole it from the first big wave surfers back in the 50s. And this is a picture of Greg Knoll, one of the first great big wave surfers. And these guys, you know, used to paddle out into waves. You can see this picture here, famous picture taken. They used to call him the Bull. And these guys would paddle out into stuff that literally could kill you, that nobody had even fathomed doing before. And the phrase they came up with, hey man, you got to go big or you go home. You got to go big or you got to go home. That was the mindset that they had. And that's the motivation that we have to have, right, to generate this momentum. The first thing we got to do is get our mind right. And I think there's 2 basic pieces to that. And the reason why it's so important is, you know, without knowing everybody, you know, obviously we're not in front of each other and hanging out, but I can take a pretty good guess, a pretty good generalization that you're the person that your friends, your family, your colleagues, your clients, your community, that all these people come to for their motivation. So my question for you is, where are you getting yours? Where are you getting yours? And for a lot of us, it comes and it goes in waves. So there's 2 really basic parts that I think that we have to look at. The first is the gratitude. Not something I was really good at in the beginning, right? I remember I was building businesses angry and I was just going and grinding it out. But sometimes when you can slow down and just be thankful for what you have, the food in your refrigerator, the gas in your car, the clothes on your back, the roof over your, stuff that we take for granted every day. So we think motivation, we think I got to get fired up, I got to go jump on tables and get all crazy, and that's not always what it is. I think what the gratitude can do is it grounds you. It's like a pressure release. It's like letting the air out of a balloon, right? We balloon up with all this stress and anxiety and intensity. And when we can let all that out and just be grateful, just start there with a base of gratitude, it's motivating. It simplifies things for you. So if you haven't slowed down, if you're struggling with maintaining your motivation on a daily basis, one of the great places to start is just be thankful. Be thankful for the challenges. Be thankful for the opportunities. Be thankful you woke up. But start simple. The other part of it is the attitude. Now, this is kind of the other side of it, right? So gratitude is grounding. Attitude is intensity, drive, that focus. This is where the swagger comes in. I like to say we got to have small business swagger again, right? That intensity that we need when we walk in a room, when we set a goal, that it is on. It's not a matter of if, it's when. Because that's part of motivation, right? One is gratitude, to simplify and be thankful, but the other one is that we've got to go get it because it's not going to show up on our doorstep. And those are the two basic pieces of motivation that I think that we need to have. So if you're struggling in the area of building that, think about, what are you doing in those spots? Are you really slowing down to be thankful? And have you really created a mindset, an attitude, that swagger, that intensity, that drive? Like I said, that feeling you had when you got that first business card, where did that go? Can you get it back? You absolutely can. And we all do different things to get this. So the one tip that I have is create a recharge regimen. We have to build into our system, into our day, a way of doing this on a regular basis, right? So the way it was taught to me by my mentor was, it takes an hour a day and he focuses on all these main areas. And quite frankly, it was just a little overwhelming for me. So I always suggest to people, hey, if you can start with 5 minutes or 15 minutes, and you could create a regimen that each day when you got up, you focused on those key areas, gratitude and attitude, whatever it is. And the process that I had started was getting up and doing these on a morning walk. And you start off first just in silence, being grateful, thankful. And then you go into a space of gratitude, speaking out loud what you're grateful for and why. It does something to you when you speak it out loud. The next part is about attitude, right? It's affirmations, speaking into existence what will be. And it was weird for me in the beginning. I'm not going to lie. It's just kind of odd. Even as a speaker, speaking out loud to myself, about myself, I was like, I don't know about this. So for those of you that need a little help, put on your iPod, walk around. Everybody just thinks you're singing. It's all good, okay? So I start off with silence, then it's gratitude, then it's attitude or affirmations, right? And then you can spend some time visualizing as well. Spend a few minutes in those areas or mix it up, make it your own. There's no right or wrong here. For some of you, it's just reading or journaling. For some of you, if you don't get in the gym, you're going to lose your motivation. Then write it into your schedule. Make it part of your regimen, but we need a recharge. Because I can tell you from a motivation standpoint, when we just keep trying to work harder and harder and harder, it's going to dwindle. We need to get back and recharge. And trust me, this is an area I continue to have to work on, right? Because I just want to keep charging forward. All right. So that's the motivation piece. Now let's move to the second part, which is the movement. And this is really exciting because this is where you can kind of put your foot on the gas. You can determine how fast you move, right? That's what's really cool. See, the old way in business is sometimes we used to just show up. If you had a keys to the door and a business card in some industries, boom, you win. And those days have changed. Those days are gone. It's just not that way anymore. And as it relates to the momentum method, as it relates to creating that consistent success over time, not overnight, I'm not talking about doubling your business tonight. I don't know how to do that. I'm the guy who won't go away though, right? I'm hopefully the guy who's going to be consistent and stay in long enough to win. And building that movement just requires some strategy, a plan, and activity, right? Which are the action steps in the right direction. And I'll give you a great analogy here because as you can tell, obviously I love surfing in the ocean. I think it's such a great analogy. Is toe-in surfing. If you look at this picture of Laird Hamilton, one of the great big wave surfers of all time. And these guys, I showed you an earlier picture of Greg Nolan, the bull, right back in the 50s. And these guys, the challenge they had was paddling out. Well, once these guys started conquering 30 and 40-foot waves, even 50-foot waves, they wanted bigger. But they realized there was a certain point where you couldn't paddle fast enough to catch these monstrous waves. So what they did one day, goofing around when there was no waves, they were out goofing around on a jet ski, pulling a surfer behind it, and then the idea clicked. And he said, oh my gosh, if we can do this on a day with no waves, what could we do on a day with big waves? And tow-in surfing was born, where now they literally, to create enough momentum, pull these guys into these huge waves that they wouldn't otherwise be able to catch using a jet ski. So what does that mean for us? What that means is in order to create the movement that we have to go, sometimes we've got to change our tooling, change our approach. These guys have to use different kinds of boards for different types of conditions. And some of us have not changed our tools in too long, right? We're stuck, we're paralyzed. We're either doing the same thing we've always done, or we've never really thought through strategy and activity. We just know I got to go sell, I got to have appointments. Well, there's a little more of a layer to peel back. So as we talk about movement, one of the great books I love is by Guy Kawasaki called The Art of the Start. And it's a great book and I recommend it, but I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version. You ready? Start. That's it. Start. That's what the book comes down to. We can start overthinking this, guys, right? So as we look at the strategy side of this, the first part is we kind of have to have a proactive plan. And this is like networking 101, but I really want you to think about if you've identified these things, because as it relates to creating movement, we got to know where we're moving and how we're moving, right? So can you answer 3 really fundamental questions about you and your business or your goals? Who are you, right? In other words, what kind of business are you in? What problem do you solve? What pain do you alleviate? And for whom? Now, some of you have rolled your eyes back and you're like, dude, really? You would be shocked how many people can't answer these questions. And as somebody who's gone through a startup, an internet startup over the last 2 years, I can tell you that every time I thought I had the answers, they seem to change on me. It's an evolution. It's always changing. So part of figuring out your movement is understanding the plan, the strategy in place. It's not just showing up anymore. It's showing up with a proactive plan. Some of you have never thought about strategy. And some of you have an old one and it's time to pivot. Right? It's time to make a change in direction without a change in purpose. Right? That's from the Lean Startup. That was one of the great phrases that came out of that book. That you can make a change in direction without having to give up a change in purpose. So we don't have to throw the whole thing away. We don't have to, as they say in sports, blow up the team and start over again. We just got to make some shifts. We got to change our strategy a little bit. The second part of movement, once we understand who we are and what we do and where we're going, this is where the rubber hits the road, right? We got to go do something. One of the things I always remind people in business, one of the great lessons of surfing, there's like 25 guys in this picture and gals. Only one of them is going to catch this wave. And ultimately, this is about a 40-foot wave. And what I tell them is that all the work done to catch a wave happens before it gets there. Think about that for a minute. All the work done to catch the wave happens before it gets there. The positioning, where you're at, when you start paddling, when you stand up, that's all done before barely the wave even shows up. We've got to take some activity sometimes before we start seeing the results, and that's where we get stuck. That's why the motivation is such an important element. But right now we're talking about the movement, right? The activity. So what I encourage you to do is think about, just simplify, break this sucker down to its most minute pieces. What's the most important thing you have to do every day to keep your business moving in the right direction? Whether that's growing revenue or profit or users or views or appointments or whatever that metric is for you. The beauty is you know in your soul what you should be doing every day. You know it. And if you don't, shame on you. But you will probably be able to figure out the answer. And if you're not, There's people that can help you with that. But by and large, you don't need a coach and a course and all this to help you figure out what you need to be doing on a daily basis. If you didn't know that going in, there's bigger challenges at work here. You know. The question is, are we doing it? For some of you, that's a certain number of phone calls, a certain number of appointments, or blogs, or networking events, or webinars, or whatever it is. But most of us know the metric that if we do this number of this, it's going to result in this. In the insurance business, if you make 30 calls a day, you're going to win. It's been around forever. It's a numbers game. Now here's the catch when it comes to activity, is that sometimes the most effective is not always the most fun, right? If you're a marketer and you love doing those big, huge, complicated, multi-tier projects, you know what? Maybe you got to get back to just doing really basic design or something, whatever it is, right? If you're an insurance agent, instead of selling the big multi-million-dollar policies, maybe it's selling the small basic stuff for a while. You have to figure out what problem your market has and what solution you have and get in there and dominate it. As my friend Stephanie Chandler said in her book, you got to own your niche. Boil this thing down so simple to that one activity that if I said you can't do anything else, I'm taking away your ability to do everything except this one thing, and it's the only way you're going to eat, what would it be? I bet you know. So here's my tip for movement, right? So remember motivation, the tip was create that regimen every day, a little bit of motivation, whether it's journaling or writing or the walk, the gratitude walk, whatever it is for you. But on the movement side, this is what I found to be really helpful, is I say measure your movement, not the money. Measure your movement, not the money. So if you identify that daily activity, it's 30 calls, it's 10 blogs, whatever it is for you, right? 10 blogs is kind of ridiculous, but you get the idea. I'm trying to come up with numbers here. Whatever, it's 3 appointments, it's 1 sale, it's whatever that metric is. Measure the movement. Do you hit that activity? This should be a number that you can control. It shouldn't be based on sales. It should be based on activity. Knock on X amount of doors, hand out X amount of flyers, meet X amount of people, X amount of emails, whatever it is. And measure that, because you can do that every day. And then you can go to bed, sleep like a baby, knowing you did what you need to do to keep moving. And that day, maybe it didn't result in money or revenue or bottom line growth or top line growth, but it will. Because you know if you're doing the right stuff, if you have the right strategy, moving in the right direction, if you stick with it long enough, guys, it will build momentum. But momentum doesn't happen overnight. You've got to trust it. So that's why I say for the first 90 days, measure your movement. Don't go, I'm not, obviously we all have to know our numbers. Pay your bills. But don't get hung up on suggesting or giving up on a strategy because it's not working in 4 days, right? It doesn't happen overnight when we do it this way. Let the late night gurus tell you the overnight success stuff. Don't know how to do it. But I know this way works. This is what builds huge companies. This is what turns around failing companies. This is what gets startups through the hardest phase. And this is what can help you. All right? So now we've got momentum. Momentum's a really powerful thing. Powerful thing. But I haven't told you the last secret before we go here with it. There's a secret to surfing, as I said, right? It's knowing when to commit. It's all that work that happens before the wave that gets there. And there's a secret to starting to create momentum. There's a secret. And I don't really use that phrase because I think it's kind of cheesy and silly, but I'm going to use it because I just did. The secret is this, that with momentum begins in a moment. The core word of momentum is moment. Momentum begins with what I would define as a defining moment. That time, that decision, that place. For me, one of those defining moments was in the hospital with my son. and in the hotel room with my wife making the decision to get back to basics. We've all had different defining moments in our life. And in order to start right now creating momentum, I believe we have to have that moment, that where we cross the line, where it's on. No more excuses. No more worrying about failure. No more indecision. No more talking about it, thinking about it. You cross a line. You're done. It's on. That's when the momentum begins. The late, great Jim Rohn said that people will change for one of two reasons: inspiration or desperation. I believe that momentum begins with inspiration or desperation. And my hope is that through this big event, through the video, hopefully a little bit through this webinar, not because I can inspire you, but hopefully I put you in a place where you can inspire yourself to make that decision, that you find whatever that defining moment is in your life. And it doesn't have to be a painful one. It took for me, I'm a knucklehead, I'm stubborn. It took such painful moments in my life to have these realizations. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to survive a fiery car crash. You don't, you know what I mean? It's like you can decide tonight, right now, wherever you're sitting in your pajamas, in your office, wherever you're at, you're ready. That's what it comes down to, is answering that question. Are you ready? So my challenge to you is this, and I only want you to accept this if you're really ready, because if you're not, it won't work. There's no halfway. You don't paddle out into a wave like this and go, oh, gee, golly gosh, I hope this really works out. It just doesn't go down like that. Okay? You need to answer this question, are you ready? And if you are, if you feel like you've experienced that moment, I want to challenge you to a month of momentum. 1 month, 30 days. And all that I want you to think about, I want you to simplify your strategy for those 30 days, and with the sole goal of beginning to create momentum, because in 30 days, you can create momentum. In 90 days, you can start creating measurable results where that momentum starts to carry itself. For after a year of doing these fundamental things, you can turn around businesses. I've watched clients double company. I mean, it's amazing the results. You will create massive, massive results that, oh, by the way, you won't be able to stop because momentum keeps going. You'll have other challenges then, but those are fun ones, right? So 1 month of momentum, this is where it starts, right? This is the paddling before the wave gets there. So every day you commit to one simple thing to keep yourself motivated. It could be reading, journaling, it could be exercising, it could be your walks, it could be prayer, it could be meditation, doesn't matter to me. But give yourself that 5 to 15 minutes. They say statistically the brain needs at least 15 minutes a day of conscious silence to maintain its health. When's the last time you gave it 5? Give yourself some time to slow down and reset. Once a day. Start with 5 minutes. I know that's hard. If I was quiet for like 10 seconds, you would flip out. Plus, I can't be quiet that long, so it's going to be hard for both of us. All right, so find that time, carve it out in your day. The second part of the challenge is the movement. So once you've identified that one thing, okay, if all the wheels come off and we have those days, that one thing still gets done, or else you don't leave the office, you don't go home, you don't sleep good. I want you that committed to the basic movement in your business. A certain number of calls, appointments, visits, emails, whatever it is that you can control. This isn't about sales and it's not about revenue. It's about the right kind of activity. And I want you to think about this. If you could do that little bit of motivation every day, if you could achieve and execute that one fundamental activity in your business every day, you can't tell me that in 30 minutes you don't start to see some change. You can't tell me in 90 days you're not going to see some measurable results. In fact, I tell a lot of people who are outside salespeople, you do this for 90 days, you probably won't need to cold call anymore because you'll have so much referrals and so much activity going on. You do this for a year, guys, you're looking at a very different business. That's my challenge for you. 1 month of momentum. If you need some help, we've got a couple of ways to do it. All right. First one is we've got a free course that we put together. I've used this for a while now. It's had great success. It's a short video course, like 5-minute videos that'll take you step by step through the nuts and bolts of it. Okay. So you can go to Brian Sharp Online, and there's a little link, and you can sign up for it there, and it'll shoot you some of the details there. If you need other resources, always feel free to email me and contact me, and you can reach me there as well. For those of you that want a little bit more, we have the Business Speaker Bootcamp. So this is a course we have put together that is based on my coaching and consulting that I've done for turnarounds with small businesses. And it takes you through the entire process from beginning to end. So there's like 4 hours of content. It's a whole video course, a huge ebook, tons of links, all the forms, resources, downloads that you need. So it's always up for sale. It's not one of these things you can never get. It's usually a couple $100, but as part of the package we put together for participating in the big event and getting the video, we've set up a little promo code so you can get it for $97 and just use the promo code BIG. Told you I'm a simple guy. B-I-G, I can remember that. So just go to presenterbox.com/shop and you can use the promo code BIG, and then you'll get instant access. We don't string it out over a period of time. Once you get that, you'll get an email back and you can dive right in. Lots and lots of that's all my best stuff there, guys. This is literally what I've used to not only build multi-million-dollar companies myself, but also for those of my clients, and seen some really great results. So if you're ready to do something and kind of want the do-it-yourself kit, I think that's a great resource, certainly worth the investment to do that. So I want to leave you with this. My goal with the big event is to create the ideas and the inspiration. My goal with adding this little webinar is to make sure that when you're done with watching the video, or you went to the event 6 weeks ago, that we do something, right? That was kind of the common element amongst all these themes that went throughout the event, was doing something. So what I hoped to achieve tonight was getting you ready. That you can forget about the resolutions you made, or forget about your old goals or your old failures or your old fears, that you realize right now that you have everything you need to get ready. So I want you to get ready. Get ready to embrace this day and the opportunity that it provides. Get ready to prepare with passion and purpose, pursue your goals with unwavering determination, to live and walk in a space of clarity and confidence and commitment. Get ready to seek wisdom and hear it. Get ready to embrace happiness and then share it. Get ready to meet and defeat any doubt with an attitude of gratitude and greatness, because our motivation will only be rivaled by the movement we make towards our next moment of victory. Our happiness shall only be rivaled by our humility, and our effort will only be rivaled by the size of our why. Get ready to never give up or never give in, but rather to give more each and every single day until there's nothing left, and then we will do more. We will think more. We will work more. We will share more each and every day with the purpose and goal of becoming more. Get ready to think bigger than ever before. Get ready to live bigger than ever before. Get ready to step into the life you were meant to live and the business you were meant to build. Get ready, guys, to go big. I appreciate you guys supporting the big event. I appreciate you supporting me and being here tonight. Thank you so much. We look forward to helping you. If there's anything that we can help you do to get ready, let us know. Until next time, this is Brian Sharp with Presenter Box in the Big Event, and we'll see you next time.